Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Mariana Almeida, and this is the McKinsey Talks directly from the McKinsey studio in São Paulo. This is our new Global Product Leadership Series. We'll talk to some of the world's most influential chief product officers about the challenges and joys of their role and go deeper into what makes a successful product-led organization, their role, their relationship with peers, the board, how to explore talent, the operating model, and much more. Product-led and customer-centric organizations are the winners of hyper-growth. They are a new breed of organization that puts product at the center of everything they do. The CPO or the VP of product are in the center of it all. The series will be led by Fabrício Dori, a partner at McKinsey and product design and customer experience leader in Latin America. Welcome, Fabrício.
Thank you, Mariana. Thank you. I'm excited to be here and to be discussing this topic. As you were saying, the topic of being a product-led organization, a customer-centric organization, is a topic that is increasingly more important for companies. Even this terminology, right? Being a product-led or being customer-centric, and that being a driver for growth, it's been growing in importance. And I think it's also because it's a topic that it's being pushed by digital native companies, startups, but it's also it's important for everyone out there, right? That needs to grow fast, needs to be more customer centric. And actually, it's been interesting to see what's been happening in the last few years. A lot of companies now are very agile, but agile almost like paved the way for them to be more customer centric, right? And then it's almost like going to the next wave of that and the next wave of growth. Super excited to be here and discuss this topic.
Fantastic. Thank you very much and welcome. And for today's conversation, we are connected with Renata Lorenz, VP of Product at VTEX. Hello, Renata. It's a pleasure to have you here as well.
Hello, everyone. So it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for organizing this for the community. It's an ascent role, so happy to share my experiences here with you.
Thank you very much and welcome.
Super. So I'll actually start our conversation, Renata, with a question to get to know you from a different perspective. Like, what is your favorite product and why?
I am a super fan of the Uber case. And let me explain why. So I think I am delighted of how they reinvented, a business model, taking into account heavy tech and design and real estate, real assets. And they reinvented a new economic operating model. And they combined all this to create value. They put it into scale and they created one of the biggest, business ever. So for me, product is about, creating value for people, creating value for business, and making it work for everyone, and scaling this into a big company. So for me, that's a very nice success case. Uber had a bumpy road in their beginnings, but still, for me, it's a delightful case of how they put everything together to create value at scale.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great example because I think it's sometimes an example that we tend to forget at this point, right? Because it became so ubiquitous, right? It's so out there, and sometimes we take for granted the magic that happens, right, behind that product.
How magic was it? To summon a car from your phone back, in 2013. I don't remember when they started, but it was magic at the moment, and now it became mainstream, which is great because they just enter into our lives and we forget about things. That's also a sign of a great product as well. We don't even remember, they're working.
Exactly. Which is maybe that's a sign, right, of great products, right? It's the magic, right? It gives you superpowers, right? For you to do something that you couldn't do otherwise, right? So I think that's a great example, and I think also it would be interesting to get to know you better because I think obviously now you've been through, and it would be interesting to hear from your career, the place you've been to. But also prior to the being one of the most important product leaders in the country, what did you do before? What's your story before becoming a product leader?
Sure. So I like to say that I'm engineering by heart and background. And I started my career, at the Boston Consulting Group. We're same breed here. And then I pursued my MBA at the Harvard Business School. And then I came back and moved to Groupon, which was at the moment the fastest growing company ever. And it was the starting of the marketplaces, the online tech business, that wave was starting, especially in Brazil, was the very beginning of tech companies. And from there, so I spent 2 years there, and then I moved into Viva Real, which was a property portal. It was a small company with 80 people and 3 million reais in revenues every year. And we built that company to become a 300 million reais in yearly revenue every year. And we grew to 1,200 people. And that in 7 years. We sold the business to Alex in 2020. And they integrated each of their horizontal marketplaces. They integrated these vertical marketplaces to create a new offering. But throughout the years in growing this company from 80 people to 1,200, I led multiple teams. I almost led all teams in the company. So I led marketing, and I led sales, and I led HR, and I led operations, and I led planning, all the planning. I led when we merged Viva Real with the Zap, which was the incumbent in the industry, to create Grupo Zap. And then I led the PMI. So I was kind of like a COO. I was a COO, and I was leading each different teams in different moments of the company. And over my last passage was with product. And the occasion that made me become product, I think, is interesting, because we were starting the merge between Zap and Viva Real to create the Grupo Zap company, this new company. And we were designing what was the future of this combined company. And really, that was the future. There was a product-led challenge. It was the future of the company would be what the future of the combined products would be. And so I was leading PMI, and then I partnered with the product team to craft this plan to understand, what the combined product would look like. And then I never left. So I'm with product team since then.
That's super interesting. I have a lot of questions about this. I'll actually hold on and ask these questions, and we go back to, because I think, you mentioned something that stuck with me, which is you've led different types of teams, right? Of different disciplines, right, within the company. How do you think that changed you as a product leader right now? Do you think that it influenced or didn't influence?
Yeah, it does. It helps me a lot on managing the C-suite a lot, because I can relate to the challenges and to the mindsets and to, the modus operandi of each craft, of each discipline, because they are different crafts. They have different value propositions. They are the different operating models. And I think product is, after the CEO, the product is a very central role in terms of it touches a lot of teams, and whatever we do in product, we need to take it to market, and we touch, many different areas of the company. So being able to bridge all teams and all disciplines and all, challenges they have into our product plans helps me create stronger product plans, helping create stronger value propositions. So I was at CX at some point in my career. So I get the pressure that CX gets. I get contact rates. I get that we need to have an answer for every case. So I kind of get all those disciplines, and I learn to anticipate their needs into the plans I create. So, and I bridge them. I think for me, the main asset is to bridge and create collaboration and create one vision, so we can all work aligned into one direction. Because companies, sometimes it's hard to align. One of the hardest things we have in managing companies, making everyone, go to one direction. And that's kind of a power that I have created with understanding our different teams.
No, I love that, because it's also it's something that I see that's very central to being a product leader, right? Which is aligning the company, right, in a direction,
yes,
and positioning that, and that's why it makes it such a strategic role, right, for companies these days. And I want to explore something around that, because I think there's two angles to it. One is I think you've seen this role change, right, with time, and I think it was not clear 10 years ago, what it meant to lead product, what were the capabilities, the skills, and all that. And at the same time, it feels like it's still in early days, right? And I think there's an interesting point, which is, you mentioned the role of the CEO, the relationship with the CEO. Do you think CEOs know, most CEOs know that they need a product leader, or they know what is a CPO?
Well, I think it depends on It depends on the story and the history and the founding story of the company. Like companies that are super strong in operations, and they tend to a lot of space, a lot of airtime is being taken by operations and short-term needs and operating metrics and short-term revenues, and that occupies a lot of space in a company. And then sometimes it gets harder to create space for a chief product officer because it's like a new role. And a new role, new people, new style, new conflicts, and then kind of just go back to the old one because life is hard for every company. Just like that's always true. So if the story of the foundation of the company doesn't include the product as a central part of it, then that space is filled by other teams. And companies need a very strong, compelling reason why they will go through the hurdle of creating a chief product officer, create a product team, and to nurture that team until it actually generates value, because it's not going to generate value in the first year and the first team you put in there. So for me, depending on the company, I think this, to your question, the CEO doesn't get it because it's ingrained in other ways of solving, that problem. And, sometimes you see companies where success is, the stakeholder asks for something and that's being put into production, and that's good. That's a definition of success, and that's fair. And on more product-led companies, you're going to see definitions of success being more tied to metrics, to what was, what's the KPI, what's the actual impact in the business. So, but it's a change, it's a mindset change. And I'm not sure all CEOs get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I think it would be good to get your perspective on what it means to be a product leader, like what it encompasses, like what is in the role, right? And how do you become one?
Good. Yeah. So I think chief of product is, it's a new role. So it's poorly defined. And I used to be a COO, which is a poorly defined role as well. So I kind of create my own definitions of things. And my personal definition of the chief product officer, we are the ultimate accountable person for creating value through our product, right? Are we creating value, yes or no? That's the ultimate accountability we have. But how do we get there? Because there's usually a team to manage and there's stakeholders to manage. We live in a complex system that if it's not well orchestrated, if it's not well managed, we can have the best, thesis for best product thesis, but we can't execute on it. So my role is vision and execution, right? So what's the product vision? How does it compare? Where's our market going? What are our customers saying? What's our experience? And industry trends and company strategy. That's things that enter as input. So we create, a product strategy that is based on the company strategy. That's usually like a consequence of a second order. We have company strategy and we have product strategy right after. And then, so that's our product strategy, right? And then I have to execute this in a more in the general context of the company. So I have product processes, so we have roadmaps and we have OKRs and we have, customer research, and we have all kind of processes to organize. And then we have two ways that we need to organize here. We need to organize internally, because when you have a team of 20 product metrics or 20 product managers, it's easier to organize them in a more organic way. When you have 100, then it's harder. Then you need to have processes to make everyone have common rituals and common language and common ways to collaborate. Otherwise, we lose too much energy on trying to collaborate instead of if you streamline it, collaboration gets easy and we can, get into the execution mode faster. So that's for inside the team. And then we have to align the rest of the company, because product is so central. I can't have a walled garden where I have everything working inside the product team and we don't touch, the real world. So that sometimes happens. So how do I align with sales? How do I align with growth, with marketing? How we make the product plan, the company plan, and then everyone's plan. So that's the challenge of executing it. And then there's a third challenge when I think of things that I take care of, which is the product people. It's a nascent role. There's a lot of competition in the market for product people. And how do I engage? How do I hire? How do I relate to them? How do I make it work for them as well? So they, stay with us and they fulfill their expectations. They fulfill our expectations, and we can craft value out of it. Because sometimes, you can have a good product culture, but you can't really sustain the product people because, the rest of the company isn't working on the same mindset, or we get, engagement issues, and then we lose the team. The output is going to be defined by the bandwidth of good people that I have staffed on my products. So those are the three pillars I take care of. So it's product vision, product processes, and product people. Them combined and orchestrated and working well will help me to become the ultimate accountable for the value we're generating through our product.
Yeah. And I want to pick up on some points that you mentioned in your answer, which I think they relate to this topic, which is what is a product-led organization, right? What is a company that has product at the center and it's so customer-centric? And you mentioned these points of the vision, execution, and the talents, right? And I think starting with the vision, how do you communicate the vision of the product? Like, is there a particular way of doing that you've seen that worked? Because it's so hard, right? There's so many people involved. Companies are growing fast.
Yeah, communication is a huge issue when we're growing. So I've been through many growing companies, and we see that the first thing that doesn't work is communication. We can't have everyone on the same page. And for me, communication there's two things here. There's the quality of the communication, there's the frequency and the channels that we deliver that communication. So we gotta be, the second one is the kind of the easiest part. We gotta be very frequent in evangelizing what are the vision, what are the principles, why we're doing this, and keeping it short and keeping it strong so we can get that message through. Because sometimes what I see is product visions get too complicated, and then it's hard to articulate and hard to make it, go through the limited channels and the limited span of attention that we have with our teams. So keeping it short and keeping it simple will allow us for understanding, which will allow us for execution, right? So that's the second part of that. So the first part, what's a product vision? I like to take it into principles. What are the value principles that we're generating? So we have at VTEX, we have 5 principles. And those are the 5 value drivers that we're taking care of. How exactly we're going to deliver on that value drivers, they will change over time. And that's going to be reflected in the roadmaps. And then we're going to have, heavier routines and heavier syncs to understand what it means in the roadmap. But I can always go back and relate to one of the main product principles, which are stable and are more permanent throughout the organization. So for me, that's the way we're structuring here. And I think it works well because we can keep coherence while we keep on changing, what exactly is going to be done and what's the roadmap for the quarter and what's been delivered, what hasn't, how things are going to move forward. Because at the end of the day, with the product vision, sometimes we're bridging to different levels here. So I have a product vision that's going to take care of strategy and where the company is going, new markets, and it's very high level. And we have, growth teams many times receiving a lot of feedback from customers of very specific things that operate on a different level. And I gotta make bridge for them, help them understand, is this on a product strategy, yes or no? The easy answer is go back to the principles, and it's gonna guide you through whether it's, have a hint of where it's gonna be included or not. And with a specific timing, then it's a different question, when we're gonna do it, that's in the roadmap. But why it doesn't make sense, yes or no, with the product strategy, then it's easier when you have those product principles.
And I want to touch on the execution as well, because execution for me also makes me think about the team setups, right, and organization setups, right, to make things work. Have you seen particular patterns or learnings, right, in the execution of it? Right? And what makes great execution?
Yeah, I think we can go to org design. So it's culture and org design, right? We touched on culture. I think we may touch on org design here. Usually execution, at the end of the day, execution is done a lot by the engineering teams. Now that's where execution flows. And so I put product usually tied to engineering teams. So they tend to mimic the tech architecture that we have. because someone needs to be closer to the tech teams, organizing and creating visions and creating roadmaps and working with them to guide, what the execution will look like. However, there's a lot of business complexity, and the business many times doesn't reflect, our business challenges don't reflect the tech architecture that we have. So someone got to bridge that space between, the operational problems and, sales growth problems and, customer service problems. So that space is bridged by the product teams. They bridge that complexity. When that bridge is done well, we can work as one team. So it starts in growth, it ends on engineering, one, way of working, and works well. What doesn't work well, when that space isn't bridged, then you kind of have two worlds. Like you have what they call the business world, the people that take care of business, and the tech team. Mm-hmm. And then we're one company, so we're not coordinating well. Mm-hmm. And agendas get split, and then business, we're all business. So one team calls itself business team, like it's a sign. And when business team, they show that we don't get anything from tech, and then tech says we don't. Mm-hmm. Business team doesn't understand us, and that's the biggest challenge and the biggest issue, and the biggest pitfall I have seen in companies when they can bridge this, and then we can execute as a company. Mm-hmm. So to my first point, being able to bridge those teams all the time, like putting them together all the time, and understanding the tensions and taking tensions out. Mm-hmm. When they're easy to manage and not when they're like deeply ingrained in the relationships. Mm-hmm. That's a role that we have as product, like being like glue that makes everything. Mm-hmm. Work seamlessly as one team.
And the third point is talent, right? Like, what do you look for when you're looking for product talent? Is there a particular characteristic? Is there something that really calls your attention when you're like interviewing a product manager or someone to be part of the team?
Yes. So I usually run like very structured processes for like many years. Like we interview for like, product skills, tell us about the product cases that we have. So we look at product sense, look at the failures, how they fail, because like product fails a lot. So we need to fail well, how they influence people, and, if they have a sense of what value is, are they optimizing for value? So that's like the bread and butter of hiring for a product. You can create like a ladder and create an interview process based on this. But I think over the years, the thing that I added, like as my special sauce on hiring, is that I also look for something that I think is very important, is looking for emotional intelligence and cognitive ability. Mm-hmm. Because they're going to be predictors of long-term success. We can hire, usually when we hire, we have a very specific context, it's very well defined. And then we look for those abilities and we put that person into the job. And 6 months into it changes, something changes, the role changes, management changes, priorities changes. And high growth tech companies, they can be like hugely chaotic sometimes. And sometimes it's hard. You got to make your role. You got to understand the context and create value, craft your own value. Sometimes you got to craft your own product as yourself, as a professional, and deliver into it. And I see emotional intelligence is a very important factor, because it's hard to navigate, and you got to keep your calm and, keep your sense, and so stay centered for, sometimes ambiguous and incoherent, actions or directions that we have in the company. And cognitive ability is what will help you like, can people take on the next challenge? Can people understand the next problem, the next market trend, the next product, so that creates, when you have some product experience, good emotional stability and emotional intelligence and good cognitive ability, that creates for stability, that sustains the stability of the product team. And when I think about, team performance, stability is one of the key, like leading indicators. Can I provide stability to the team? Is those people in the team staying long enough so they can become a team and they can actually, understand the problem and generate value and nurture that value they created? If we don't have stability, then it's hard. And that's another pitfall that companies have on executing on a product, because teams get too unstable, and they're always on learning curves, and they're always onboarding, and then changes, and a new person comes, and then you don't have stability, and then you don't have execution at the end.
This is very interesting, but how to identify these characteristics in a process when you're hiring someone?
Well, you look at previous experience. I am a super fan of like competence interviewing. Like, tell me a case. Like, tell me what was hard in your last company. What were the things that make you lose energy? What are the things that puts energy on you? And tell me the cases. Now, tell me the specific examples. I'm always looking for specific examples when I'm interviewing people, because you can trust way more the past behavior than what people will tell you as their desired behavior. So I am always looking for past past emotions, past understandings, past behaviors that people had. And my whole interview process is like, tell me cases, tell me a case around this, tell me a case around that, tell me a case around, and as you make the questions, usually you pick an experience where people will show you whether they thrive on chaotic environments and they make their own way, or like they don't, like they blame the context, or they don't put responsibility on themselves, they put responsibility in the company. So that's the way I try to manage on emotional intelligence. For cognitive ability, it's, tell me the things that you learn throughout lives. Are you a learner? And what kind of learnings did you have? So what different kinds of experience you had in your life, and how much can I see you learning into different contexts and giving me cases that are sophisticated enough so I can see that you learned on that new context. So that's the way I do.
No, I think this is fascinating because it goes way beyond like technical abilities to lead product, right? Because in the end of the day, it's so multidisciplinary, right? You have designers, you have developers, you have data scientists, and then the product person is very much in the center of this and connecting different disciplines. So I can see why it's necessary to have the emotional intelligence, but also it changes all the time, right? So you actually need to be a fast learner. So I think this is fascinating because it goes way beyond, right? The abilities to do it. The technical abilities, exactly. And also let me step back for a second. I just want to pick on something because your career, going through different digital, very hyper growth companies, right? What do these companies, from your perspective, and you were a consultant before, so you saw different types of organizations as well. What do you think make them different? Like, what is different from a company that's doing, like, as you're saying in your story, like Viva Real, Zap, OLX, Groupon, right, which grew like incredibly fast. What makes these companies different from, in quotes, like traditional companies?
Yeah, so I think they started on...
And VTEX, of course.
Yeah, exactly. So they all started on my experience has been around companies that have built their business model based on the competitive advantages that tech brings us, right? Mm-hmm. So when that's true, then the engineering team or the tech team becomes an asset for the business model. The business needs to grow through them. That's a strong force in creating this like new breed of companies, because the tech team becomes, the center of value creation, and then value gets, spread in like greater circles. Everyone's part and everyone is responsible for the final result, but it's, the center, the beginning of the value creation starts usually in the tech team. And that's, for me, it's a fundamental asset in creating, those different those companies that think differently, because, tech has a voice and tech needs to be taken care of. We need to care for the team with, the best energy that we have, because they're actually the center of the value creation. So it's different from when, I was, back in 2000 and I'm going to give my age here, but back in 2006, when I was, a consultant, and we were working in, heavy industries,
mm-hmm.
like iron ore, and that was different. The tech team was not the core, the iron was the core,
Was a support.
the manufacturer was the core. Yeah. So where is the core of the business model? Who is the core of the value creation? That says a lot about the culture. And it's fair. It's like there is no right over the years. It's like there's no right or wrong in terms of culture. It's just what is the culture that serves best your business model and will serve best your business outcome and your business success, and your success as a business. So, because if you get a company that is way, value creation is way ingrained in manufacturing, maybe the new culture is not suitable for that business, and it's fair. It's whatever works for the business.
No, I think that's and now wearing my hat of consultant, right? And I think what's happening and what we see and what I see in the market is that a lot more companies need to be like that. Right, because it's not enough, right, to have even in mining, right? I think the example of mining is interesting. Like even in mining, the mining product, obviously, ore, iron, whatever, it's very important. But you need so much technology, right, to be able to make that happen in a more effective way, more efficient way. That it's that sometimes let's say the product or the customer centricity there is internal, let's say, like creating tools for them to work better, right? And maybe having an internal product team that leads that and delivers great experiences, great software, that kind of stuff. But I agree with you. It depends a lot, right? In the sector, it depends on what you're trying to achieve, right, as an organization.
It depends on what's the value creation of that.
Perfect.
Because sometimes you may have old business models and that they were not born in the tech world, but now they need tech as a channel. Like their sales channels become way more like we sell online now. We don't sell as much, as we used to sell like offline. So then there's a strategic part of their business that becomes really tech heavy, and they may lose their business because they lose the channel. And that becomes a strategic asset. And then it's a force to shift towards a more like product-centric, tech, agile kind of culture.
So Renata, could you tell us a little bit about VTEX as well? And what's the role exactly there?
Sure. So VTEX is the leading enterprise digital commerce platform in Latin America. We are a super relevant player in terms of GMV, with almost $10 billion in GMV in 2021. And our core value proposition is that we put our experience in service of our clients so they can help, they can focus on innovating and growing their product lines where they can trust VTEX for their commerce platform. And my role here, I'm currently leading the product team. So I have product designers and product managers and specialists that stay with us in the product team. And I'm working closely with like the executive team and the co-founders, and co-CEOs of the company to build what's the future of the product and the future of the business. The future of the product and the future of the business, they're kind of like the same story, like because the business is based on our product. And we had just become public last year on New York Stock Exchange. So it's kind of a new era for the business. And now here I am to build what the next 10 years will look like.
What are the capabilities of the teams? Just as a curiosity, like you mentioned that there's designers, there's product specialists. Like what is the group of capabilities that make product at VTEX?
So yeah, we have product managers, and then we have product designers that may focus more on customer research or user interface. And then we have a team of documentation and education that helps, bridge it's the first go-to-market. It's the first piece of go-to-market where we have our product. Our product is very extensible, so there's a lot of APIs that can be used. And the documentation becomes a new front end of that product. So we have a team that creates and documents what the product is and makes it available for the developer community. And we have a localization team that helps us bridge the different challenges of different nationalities. So you have left to right, right to left in other cultures, and how we adapt the product to Europe and to America and to Middle East. And I also have a prod ops, which is it's a new role in product. So I have a team that helps me with, processes and KPIs and running what is structural in the product team. And that's about it. That's in the product. And we have like tech team, that the engineering team, they are my peers, and we have data scientists and engineers and infrastructure people in that team.
Why do you think some companies still don't have a CPO and this team working in this sense?
Yeah, so why companies don't have a CPO yet? I think they probably, that role is being filled by someone. It's being filled by sales, it's being filled by marketing, it's being filled by the CTO sometimes. We still have a lot of, sometimes the product is inside the engineering team and you have it spread throughout the teams. So I think the product role can be filled by other teams. The marketing team at some point can feel this. The thing is, they usually come from a perspective of their marketing perspective, and there's a very important perspective, which is a tech perspective. Like everything we deliver through tech many times. And if for some reason that thing is breached, that challenge is breached, then you get the job done without a CPO. But more and more, if you put someone that understands marketing and understands CX and understands engineering, you can craft better plans and more robust plans with a product team. But I think it goes back to how was the company started, what was the mindset at the beginning. And that's kind of like management, legacy, or just management mindset occurred to that. Sometimes there's not a strong, for me, when people ask me, what do you think it needs to happen for a company to become product led? And for me, the answer is there needs to be a compelling why. Why are you going to go through that hurdle? Why are you going to change your culture? The why, it may sound cliche, but the why is very important because it's what sustains you throughout, the energy expenditure and the challenges and the new conflicts that are going to be created as you change, the decision matrix of the company.
Yeah, no, I think that's super important. And also this reflection, right, of like what, as you said before, like what creates value, right? Where do you put the energy? I want to go back to something you mentioned on the product ops, because product ops is a very new discipline, right? and it's interesting to see, I mean, it's obviously very important, right? Because especially if you're growing, if you're a growing team, like you need to standardize ways of working, platforms, tools, all of that. Is that a new team? Was it there because you joined recently? Was it there? Like, what was the thinking of having a product ops team and how they operate?
That was a very special surprise when I found that we have a great product ops team.
Nice.
And that was a delightful surprise when I found the team. I did not create it myself. The team was there before. And their role is that's it. Like we defined with the team, how do we want to operate? But then the change management and, defining what's the structure, what's the exact, template, when are we going to, let's take OKRs, for example. So how are we going to report OKRs when it's, when we report each time, and what's the template? How are we going to give end of year review, end of quarter reviews? That's things that, product marketing or product ops, what the philosophy we use is we productize, our own processes. So we go in the teams, we understand what's working for them, what are the bright spots, what are the pains, and then we kind of make a proposal, and then we keep iterating those proposals to get established as a process. So it gets really organic with the product team and the design team of how we work, because at the end, they kind of facilitated this collective building of a process that works for all of us. And then they standardize, and then, they keep on the change management or, the necessary energy for us to feel that process on a quarterly basis, on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, whatever the frequency is.
There's something that I wanted to explore with you before we finish, which is this topic of marketplaces, right? And marketplace as a product. Because I think that's also, I think you're probably the person with more product experience in marketplaces in maybe the Americas, where like you've been through
10
companies.
years, yeah.
And probably the world, because you've been through companies that they are let's say iconic marketplaces, right? iFood, Groupon, Zap, OLX, and now VTEX, right? And I think the question is like, what is the marketplace as a product? And is there anything that's different of being a product leader, like leading such a complex product? Because it has multiple users. It also has multiple products within it, right? You mentioned integrations, for example, right? Integrations became such a strong topic. There's startups doing just integration because the integration needs to be so like a smooth experience, right? What is special? What is different about leading product of marketplaces?
So I think leading product is leading product, right? The specific challenges of a marketplace is we have conflicting interests in the marketplace, right? So to start, I have been in online marketplaces, so that portion of tech being, a central part of value creation was true in all of them. So really, an online marketplace is an online business, and in our value creation goes a lot through product, not only through tech. There's operations and there's growth, but a lot of it goes through tech. So we created this new culture and the product culture from the beginning. So that for me, it was easier to manage. I was lucky enough to be like bred as a product leader in companies that had strong product culture. But being a product in a marketplace is bridging many interests, right? Because you have a client interest, which is who is buying in the marketplace. Then you have the merchant interest, who is like selling in the marketplace. And if you have a transactional marketplace, you have sometimes the logistics or the transaction part of it that you have to manage as well. And the interesting part of it is that none of those interests, they align. The merchants, they want, if you take only the merchant's perspective in the marketplace, you're gonna end up in the Yahoo or Google in the beginning, they were flooding you with ads, and the customer experience was poor. But that was good for the merchant. That was what the merchant wanted. The merchant wants to exposure, whatever they don't care what's your overall conversion rate. They care about their conversion rates. If their conversion rate is great and the overall conversion rate of the marketplace goes down, that's fine, right? on the merchant perspective, on the individual merchant perspective. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to think what's their experience, what's the overall experience of the marketplace for all merchants are. And then you got to think what's the customer experience at the marketplace is. For them, it's showing them whatever is relevant for their needs at that moment, not what the merchant wants to show. And so there's a conflict here. We always have like ads, and a portion of the marketplaces are dedicated to like paid exposure, but that can only be a portion of the marketplace. Most of it needs to be relevant for what the customer is looking for. And then we could monetize more ads. Maybe we could, but the overall business performance would suffer because the conversion rate would go down, and we'll have less orders and less brand and less worse cohorts. So for me, the interesting part of marketplace is that because there's so many conflicting interests, you need that product person bridging and crafting a plan that is good enough for everyone and without letting anyone really down. So that balance of always taking every interest into account and creating visions and plans and work, products that serve all those interests, that's an interesting challenge for me. So looking back at being a product in the marketplace, there is, we have many customers and you got to bridge them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I think this is a topic for another podcast. We can do only on marketplaces.
All marketplaces, yeah. They're very interesting business, yeah.
One last question. I think, after, people that are going to be listening to you and listening to your comments on like product as being something that's very core, very strategic, the delivery through technology, where the value comes from. the different types of skills, how you organize. I mean, there's a lot of things that are, let's say, characteristics of companies that are very digital native, very customer-centric, and very product-led. And I think maybe, is there any final recommendation? Because you're going to be listened by people that are in companies that are already like that, and people that are in companies that are not, right? They're looking to become more product-led and more oriented towards the customer. Is there any recommendation, final tip into becoming more this type of organization, looking for hyper-growth?
Yeah, I think, so my take on, and that's a personal take, and I can take it from a career as well. No, tech is going to change the way we do business. Tech is going to become more and more and more relevant. We have seen in the last 10 years becoming more relevant, and we only see more ways and new technologies and better, we now have the habit of buying online, of closing transactions online. So that trend is, on my take, is based on convenience. A very important factor, value creation of products are convenience. Is it easy? Like we said on Uber at the beginning, it's so easy. We forgot about it. I'm just like a huge addicted of that product right now. How much addiction are you creating because you are so easy to use? And technology is going to play a huge, portion of that value creation, and that's going to affect our business. So if any business, if they haven't still find the why, the why is going to show up at some point. And when the why is there, change is going to be needed, and then product is going to become more important. And when that moment comes, my tip is it's all about people. You're going to have good product people. Good product people would create good product cultures that would create good, flywheels of product value creation. If we start with people that are strong, they're not strong enough, then, the first hurdle will not be surpassed, probably. And, you're going to end on the old, ways of working and doing business. So that's my take for it.
Thank you very much, Renata. Our time is up. So, Fabrício, would you like to add anything else to close the session?
Just want to thank you very much for your time. You've been very generous. We had multiple conversations prior to this, and I think it's fantastic to see a woman in your place of leadership leading in such an important company. And I think for those listening, stay tuned. We're going to have conversations with other CPOs like Renata. They're very influential and changing the way we create customer-centric companies. And that's it. Thank you, Renata, again.
Thank you. Well, thanks again. Thanks for doing this for the communities. Yeah.
So thank you very much, Renata, and Fabrício also for being here with us. And I would also like to thank all of you who are watching us on video or listening to us on podcast. If you would like to know more about product leadership or contact one of our experts, please send an email to mckinsey-talks@mckinsey.com. Go to mckinseytalks.com for a full agenda of McKinsey Talks. There you can also check out this episode and earlier ones on video or podcast. That's it. Thank you very much and see you next time.